開始啦吓。
Let's get started. This is going to be the session 3. First of all, I would like to welcome deputations and individuals for attending the special meeting of the Constitutional Affairs Panel. Today we want to talk about the Consultation Document on the methods for selecting the CE in 2017 and forming the electrical in 2016. We want to collect public views. This session will last until 1:10 p.m. I would then like to invite deputations and individuals to speak in the prescribed order. So you should not speak for more than 3 minutes, and then there will be bell which will ring after 3 minutes. Your oral representations do not enjoy any protection under the Electoral Powers and Privileges Ordinance. So please speak closer to the mic and so that we can hear you better. So if you don't hear clearly, please put on the earpiece. Now, after you have spoken, then I will open the floor to questions by members, and then I will ask the Mr. Lau Kongwa, the Undersecretary, to give a consolidated reply. The first one is Mr. Tong Wai-ming, Chairman. Members. Late last year, the SARG started consulting on the subject of selecting the C in 2017 and forming the electrical in 2016. And it shows that the government is determined to promote democracy in Hong Kong. And then there will be universal suffrage for both the CE and the electrical. On the consultation document, discussions focus on civic nomination and also meeting with international standards. Recently, there has been the suggestion of a 3-track approach. These suggestions seem to have gone beyond the basic law and the decisions of MPC-SC, and some people are trying to force through these proposals, and they're not trying to discuss them with us now. I oppose the 3-track approach and the civic referendum motto. I think the consultation or the discussion should be based on the basic law and the MPC-SC decisions, and so that we can take the reform promote the reform in a gradual and orderly approach. If we go to the extremes and we don't discuss, then we will not be moving forward with our constitutional reform. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chong Wai-chang. Good morning, Chairman, Other Secretary and members. I want to speak on behalf of the Association of Chinese Culture of Hong Kong. First of all, Hong Kong's prosperity and stability is a mark of the success of one country and two systems. For the CE election to be held in 2017, we hope to have universal suffrage, and then a small minority of people have ulterior motive, and they are trying to mislead Hong Kong people. And Hong Kong people are sort of divided in their views, and they are criticizing each other, and we're wasting a lot of energy and time, and the economy's development is held back, and they're trying to speak from high moral grounds, and we blame the CPG for the failure of Hong Kong, and we blame the CE, and they try to undermine the one country, two systems. So we hope that leaders of Hong Kong, electoral members and political parties, and those who love Hong Kong, please abide by the basic law and the MPC-SC decisions. In your discussions, you should discuss rationally and forge consensus so that we can achieve universal suffrage in CE election 2017. We should have some rules to go by. Basic law is a part of the constitution of the country, and it was drawn up after much efforts, and it was should be well respected. And if some people don't abide by the basic law, and how can Hong Kong people live and work happily in Hong Kong? Now, more haste, less speed. Hong Kong must take a gradual and orderly approach in its constitutional reform. Some people are suggesting some illegal sort of universal suffrage, and we see that in neighboring countries in Hong Kong, which are considered democratic, there are upheavals and political turmoils. And is this what we want to see in Hong Kong? And thirdly, Hong Kong people should focus all our energy on the relevant provisions in the Basic Law and the NPCSC decisions in discussing political reform. We should come up with a proposal which elects a CE which takes care of the overall interest of Hong Kong. So there should not be more than 3 candidates, and then the CE election should be competitive. And so the number of candidates should not be too small, or else we will not be given too many choices. The CE should have good leadership skills, and he should be trusted by the CPG and Hong Kong people alike. If we have too many candidates, that would be a waste of public resources. According to the Basic Law, the nominations should be made by a broadly representative nominating committee. And only by doing that, we can elect a good CE. Next, Professor Vincent Kwan Pen Fong. I have 5 points to make. First of all, there are several principles. We should abide by the Basic Law and the NPCSC decisions, which uphold the principle of equal or balanced participation. The electorate base of the nominating committee should be broadened, and the voters can make nominations for consideration by the nominating committee, and the process should be simple. I think the 4 sectors should be maintained. The number in each sector should be increased from 300 to 600, and there should be an equal number of members in each sector. The total number should be 2,400 people. There should be 4 sectors: political sectors, commercial sectors, professional sectors, and grassroots sectors. All these have been written in my submission. The nominating committee can be elected by the whole of Hong Kong, and it should cover more professions and trades to enhance its representativeness. So in other words, each and everyone in Hong Kong should have a voting right to elect members to the nominating committee. Also, I suggest that all voters should have the right to make nominations of the CE for consideration by the nominating committee. Now, say in 3 months before the meeting of the nominating committee, all voters in Hong Kong can make nominations or suggest names for consideration by the nominating committee, and the government can regularly announce the lists of nominees. Now, as for the candidates nominated, 300 members can nominate 1 candidate, and the candidate should give an official oath before he can become a candidate, and then every nominating committee should cast at least 2 votes and not more than 4 votes, and those who are not doing that should be considered void votes. And those who have the 2 who have the highest votes will become the CE candidates automatically. Now, the number of candidates, there should not be no limit. There should not exceed 8 in number, and then there should be more than 2 and fewer than 3. Now, if we have too many candidates, then it would be difficult for the members of the public to understand the election manifesto. In many countries, the number is about 2 to 3. Mr. Yu Hon Lun. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, some who are here said that we must comply with the basic law, but then others say that for CE candidates, do we need 3 or how many? Again, is that in line with basic law? Let me come to my views first. On the consultation, I'd like to say something on this consultation. After government launched this consultation, we believe that in a community, it seems that there's no direction to follow. The government is just asking us to look at the various articles of the basic law, but is there a framework for us to conduct the discussion? Well, you explain the laws to us, but we're not professionals, so how do we go about the discussion? And when there's the need to interpret the law, then the government says nothing, then the liaison office has to make explanations, and then there's organization and nomination. But it's not in the basic law you want us to discuss, but how? And what are the standards to go by in discussing the details of you? The basic law and the legal requirement, I think for most of us, the focus is on the nominating committee. As we all know, for the C election has to go through the nominating committee. But in Annex 1, there are the details. We believe Annex 1 actually contradicts Article 41 because it's just a transitional arrangement. If you look at the composition, the labor sector, the business sector, and NPC, and so on, already there's a restriction on the number of members. And many may want to vote for the nominating committee members, but they don't get votes because most of the voters are corporates. And then what about the representative to this? Actually, they do not represent a general wish of the people, and it's not in line with the original intention of Article 45 that's broadly representative, and there cannot be universal suffrage in a gradual and orderly manner. So if you look at it, this part, cannot just lift copied mechanically from Annex 1 in forming the nominating committee, and there has to be no screening, otherwise democratic elements would be undermined. So that's why we propose that for the nominating committee, it must be formed by a way that most represents the public views. So there's mention of public nomination. Generally in the community, it's believed that public nomination does not actually violate the basic law. Let's take the example of district councillor. A certain percentage of voters could return a district councillor. So we could go by the same basis in forming the nominating committee. We hope the government will consider this view most seriously in forming the nominating committee. Thank you. Next, Mr. Wilson Loan. Thank you, Chairman. I graduated 2 years ago. There are many young friends with taking polarized views. One group is totally indifferent to what's going on with the constitutional development. The other group is radical. They want to express their views in a radical manner. But among young people, there's a high degree of indifference, and and apathy. But so it's better that we can encourage more young people to take part in the exercise. Why is it that so many young people, university students, don't care about politics? That's because there are so many arguments and so much bickering, especially the opposition camp and the government has come up with so many different views, Mr. Qiao Xiaoyang of the NPC said that for one country, two systems to succeed, we must keep the capitalist system in Hong Kong. At the same time, we must keep the Chinese socialist system with Chinese characteristics of China unchanged. That's to ensure stability and prosperity in the country and in Hong Kong. So that's why we cannot have a candidate that fights the CPG. But now, with public nomination, is actually not in line with the basic law requirements, and there could be candidates who fight or oppose the CPG. Now, for students, young people, then we would be further discouraged in taking part in the discussion on constitutional development. Rather, we would like to see more rational discussion. Occupy Central is most unhealthy to the development of Hong Kong and to our economic development. So we resort to radical means to achieve our own ends. It's not realistic, it's not healthy. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you. Next, Mr. Lee Sai Wing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The New Territories Association of Societies believes that since 2007, the NPCSC made a decision that there could be universal suffrage for the CE election in 2017, and all sectors have since had high expectations. Of course, we know that the CE election must be in line with the Basic Law articles and the NPCSC decisions. Now, any discussion outside this framework is against these legal provisions. We always say that the rule of law is one of the core values of Hong Kong. Then we must not be selective in abiding by the law. We must defend the rule of law with resolution. Now, we're talking about a number of candidates. Our association believes 2 to 4 candidates would be about right, and it's also more workable. The reason is if there are too many candidates, as some have pointed out earlier on, then it's difficult for the public to compare the different candidates. And if there are too many candidates, the candidates may not get a high number of votes, so there's not enough mandate. That will make it difficult for the government. So that's why we believe 2 to 4 candidates would be appropriate. On the nominating committee, the Basic Law has stated clearly that the committee must be broadly representative. So we could include all district councillors, then we could achieve that requirement or meet that requirement, because district councillors are elected by 3 million voters in Hong Kong. So if we could include district councillors in the nominating committee, then we could achieve broadly representative. As for our position is in the annex, so please refer to our submission. Thank you. Next, Mr. Peter Wong. Mr. Chairman, members, I have the following views on the consultation document. Article 44 of the Basic Law states that the chief executive in Hong Kong must be aged 40 or above. He must have been ordinary resident in Hong Kong for more than 20 years. He must have no right of vote outside of Hong Kong. And he has to be permanent resident of the Hong Kong SAR as well as a Chinese citizen. Now, for a Chinese citizen, when he pledges allegiance to the country, in the pledge it says that he has duty to defend sovereign rights and territory, and he must also defend the dignity and security of the country. So that means CE candidate must love Hong Kong, love China. That is the precondition. In Article 45 of the Basic Law, it says that the method for selecting the chief executive shall be specified in the light of the actual situation in the Hong Kong SAR and in accordance with the principle of gradual and orderly progress. The ultimate aim is the selection of CE by universal suffrage upon nomination by a broadly representative nominating committee in accordance with democratic procedures. So there are already provisions spelling out the nominating method. Now, I have the following views on the selection of the CE. There has to be a broadly representative nominating committee that makes the nomination in accordance with democratic procedures. So it is the requirement of basic law. That's why there's a sound legal basis for the organizational arrangement. And we should have regard to the composition of the election committee of the previous terms of CE election. And there should be 4 sectors which are representative, forming the nominating committee. Now, this has worked very well in the past few elections. For the majority of the members of the election committee, they are returned by indirect election, and there are over 3 million eligible voters voting for district councillors. So that means they are directly involved in the CE election. So there's a broad representation and is in line with the principle of balanced participation. Now, I would suggest that there should not be no more than 3 candidates. There should be an 800-person nominating committee. to make nominations. 100 nominating committee members could recommend a candidate, and all the recommended candidates would then be voted on by all nominating committee members to choose 3 candidates who will then run in the election. And for these candidates, they must have the support of at least half of the nominating committee members before they could run in the election. That would be in line with the democratic procedures. And then these C candidates will be voted on by all voters in Hong Kong in direct elections, and then we'll have our CE. For the 2016 LegCo election, we could keep to the present approach, but we could consider more directly elected member seat. We could also consider expanding the electorate base for functional constituencies, but for the actual details, we could consider them further in the light of the actual situation in society. Now, for universal suffrage, the aim is a balanced participation, and that could include democratic procedures, could include both direct election and indirect election. The states is the standard that we go by in universal suffrage. Mr. Fong, you've given your written submission already. Yes, let me finish then. But then in the States and other countries also borrow from make reference to the American system, but not all have equal direct election. There is usually a mix of both direct and indirect elections. Thank you. Next, Mr. Yip Tai Wai. I have 5 points to make. First, the CE election methods must be in line with the basic law. The EC must be someone who loves Hong Kong and loves China, and there must be a proper nomination procedure by the nominating committee. And it doesn't matter whether it's LegCo nomination or public nomination, there must be screening of some sort. And then the nominating committee could be based on the current 4 sectors, and we could consider expanding the nominating committee to 1,200 to 1,800. And for the 4 sectors, they should be as even as possible. And there should be no more than 5 CE candidates, so that voters could have clear targets and choose the CE who would actually work for the good of Hong Kong. Hong Kong is not an independent political entity. We are a special administrative region of China, and the CPG has the power to appoint a CE. Now, it is the hope of all Hong Kong people to have universal suffrage. That's why we have to proceed cautiously in line with the gradual and orderly approach. We must not rush things in implementing universal suffrage, otherwise that may undermine people's livelihood. So those are the 5 points I like to make. And now, before the reunification, people don't know much about democracy or election methods. But then after reunification, we are beginning to learn more about democracy in election methods. So I hope now we are able to choose the CE who is in our best interest. Next, Mr. Chair Kai Sun. Well, there are different views in the community. It's only natural. If there is only one view in a community, it's not usual. The constitutional reform is just to allow the various opposition parties to come back to the negotiating people. Public nomination, we are trying to achieve things overnight, and it seems that there is not much sincerity in the negotiation. As for Occupy Central, definitely is against the spirit of the rule of law in Hong Kong, and it won't help to achieve to show consensus. That's why I think we should adopt a gradual and orderly approach in achieving universal suffrage. That's the pragmatic way to go about things. Thank you. Next, Mr. Leung Chun. I'm a secondary school student. I'm a member of the Alliance of United Association of Secondary Students. Now, we believe we should keep to the 4 sectors, but for each sector, the number could be increased to 500, 600. We could also change the eligibility for voters. We could consider abolishing corporate votes, and then all practitioners in the relevant sectors could vote in their individual capacity. And that will greatly expand the electorate base of the nominating committee, so that practitioners of different sectors could also take a part in voting for the candidates. That will help to enhance the democratic element of nominations. And we must also ensure that there is competition between loyalist and pan-democratic candidates. And there are 3 principles we must stand firm by. It is necessary that we have universal suffrage for the 2017 CE election. Will help to improve things now. Now, the universal suffrage for CE election is in line with the Basic Law and the MPCSC decisions, so it's essential that we have it. Within the framework of the Basic Law, universal suffrage for the CE election must be on the basis of the nominating committee. Now, could there be a public nomination element? We believe it could be considered. In the long run, our council and myself believe there should be a 6-step process in constitutional reform. Leung Kai-chiu once said that we have to have regard to the law, and within the basic law framework, we could only adopt the nominating committee. But maybe after 10 years or so, we may consider improving upon the procedures, and then we could then further enhance the democratic elements in the system. So that's why we propose a 6th step in the process. That is, there could be further reform eventually, and then gradually and in an orderly manner we could enhance the democratic element for the CE election. So from 2017, our constitutional development must play a positive role in ensuring stability and prosperity in Hong Kong, and we could have active dialogue with CPG. Maybe in the long run we could amend the basic law. Maybe it seems impossible now, but our council and I believe that even if we think it's not impossible, we have to try. We do have high expectations for universal suffrage. Now, in 2017, we will have the first universal suffrage, and the government should take constitutional development forward in ensuring prosperity and stability in Hong Kong. Of course, we don't want any scenarios that will undermine our economy. So we should keep up a dialogue with the CBG, and then in the long run, we could amend the basic law and also implement and put in place a law on political parties. And then we could include public nomination or political parties nomination in the basic law. Now we have to make compromise in the light of the reality, but that will lay the foundation for a more mature political system in the future. Thank you. Mr. Chen Ping. We always say we have to defend our core values. Freedom and democracy, of course, are one of the important core values. A few days ago, there's a media report that for 20 years in a row, Hong Kong is considered the freest economy in the world. Well, there's freedom of the press, freedom of expression, and freedom of speech. Hong Kong is doing quite well. That shows the government is all determined to govern in accordance with the law. But then many people say that there's no democracy in Hong Kong. Well, under British rule for more than a century, when did they ever give us democracy? On the 30th of June 1997, our last governor left only then. So when we talk about democracy or universal suffrage, we only have it after the reunification because it's stated in the basic law. Without the basic law, without reunification, then how can we defend our so-called core values? Now we're talking about universal suffrage. Of course, some claim that there's a screening, this is a phony universal suffrage. But if we cannot endorse a proposal this time round, there won't be any universal suffrage at all. That's why we need to sit down and discuss things and try to narrow differences as far as possible. Now, this morning, it seems that the focus of the discussion has been on the nominating committee. Now, some said, nominating committee, this organizational nomination is not stated in the basic law, but then I was following the discussion. In session 2, the Undersecretary tried to explain that, so I won't repeat his points. So there's already a basis, a legal basis, and there's a consensus. Now, on that, could we relax things a bit? Because some have proposed a public nomination or nomination by political parties. Now, even the government couldn't tell us or what exactly the nominating procedure would be. What is the nominating procedure? We know that in the past you just need to show your ID card and you collect a few signatures and then you can run in district council elections and so on. And then last term, the nominating committee and election committee became one. But now the eligibility for making nomination, there's no mention. How do we sign up? How do we recommend people? Maybe there's public nomination, but at the end there's some form of endorsement of the public nomination. Yeah, because this is the nominating committee is the ultimate gatekeeper. So what's wrong with accepting nominations from the public or political parties? You couldn't explain that. Perhaps in a moment the Undersecretary explained that. This public nomination or the nomination procedure itself, how does it work? I still haven't got it. Of course, there are a lot of arguments and disputes. I think it's best if we could all sit down and talk about it.
Thank you. I study overseas and I've lived overseas for some time. I have actually seen that in the US, the Canada and the UK, they have their own system of democratic election. I don't think there is a single standard which applies to all. It would depend on the legal system, the historical background, the culture of those countries, and each of them will evolve their own system of democratic election. Today, I'm very happy to be here. We have, under the framework of one country, two system, and Hong Kong being a part of China, and this is the fact that we must recognize. This is this is the most fundamental. It's clearly stated in the basic law. On the rule of law, if we do not agree with the content of the basic law, we don't even need to talk about how we can have universal suffrage for the CE election in 2017 and also universal suffrage for the legislative election in 2020. Article 45 mentioned that the nomination committee should be broadly representative. Chairman, I have a suggestion to make, and I hope the administration will consider this. And some other deputations have also made a similar point. That is, in 2005, an option was proposed, and that was whether or not the widely representative, the broadly representative nomination committee could be made even more representative. I'm a directly elected district councillor. I hope the government will consider incorporating the directly elected district councillors into the nomination committee so that we can make it even more broadly representative. On compliance with the law, I hope that our LegCo members in the process of political development, we should put aside our differences and really, work for the interests of the people of Hong Kong. The people of Hong Kong really aspire for universal suffrage on the basis of steadily progress. How can we, consult with each other? Let's take one step forward first, so that the people of Hong Kong will benefit and feel that we are taking a step forward in our political system. It shouldn't be the case that just because of the differences in our opinion, our political system will not be able to move forward. Eventually, we would be able, I hope we are able to achieve the universal suffrage for CE election in 2017 and also the formation of LegCo in 2020. Mr. Yim Kim Ping. The Hong Kong Project Management Exchange Center would hope that we're going to have a soft landing for our political development. I think we should accommodate each other's views, arrive at a consensus, and only this will be beneficial for the Hong Kong. Regarding the formation, the election of a CE in 2017, we have 7 suggestions. First of all, we agree that the nomination committee can make reference of the way the existing election committee is formed. Secondly, the nomination committee may comprise of the 4 sectors, and we can increase its membership to 1,600 or 2,000. The proportion, the ratio of members among the 4 sectors should remain the same. Thirdly, the newly added members from the blue sector, I think they should all go to the directly elected district councillors. Fourthly, I think there can be public nomination for CE candidates. The threshold is that there should be at least 5,000 eligible voters, and each voter can only nominate 1 candidate. Number 5, the nomination committee must make nominations according to democratic procedures. And the following is our suggestion. We suggest that the nomination committee members should, cast a block vote for all the nominated candidates, and so they should either will give 1 point for the candidate they endorse and a -1 point for the one they don't, and so on. And the candidate obtaining the highest score, 4 or 5, will then contest the election. And then all voters in Hong Kong can cast more than 1 vote. So we can either cast no vote at all or 1 to 4 votes. And the candidate will be ranked according to the number of votes that they have won. The candidate winning the most number of votes, I think the successful candidate should at least win 50% of the votes. Only then could the CE be representative. Number 7. At the current stage, I think we should maintain the requirement that CE should not affiliate with any political parties. And we may need to explore this issue further in the future. Regarding the formation of LegCo in 2016, we have 3 suggestions. I think in 2016 we can still keep the 70 seats and maintain the functional constituencies. Members returned by direct election and FC should stay the same. And voting at FC elections should be based on individual voting, and we like to propose to increase the number of functional constituencies, and that we should broaden the electorate of the functional constituencies so that it's compatible with the principle of steady progress. And also for some districts in the NT, the constituencies are too large and there should be appropriate adjustments. Mr. Chen Wai-hong, thank you. I'm a young man. I hope that people from all sectors of society can engage in a rational discussion so that we can put aside our differences and come to a consensus, so that within this year we'll be able to arrive at an option that is compatible with the basic law, so that we can have universal suffrage for the 2 elections. The 2017 C election must be compatible with the basic law and the NPCSC decision. The pan-democratic camp put forward the idea of popular nomination. That is not compatible with the basic law. Article 45 of the basic law said that the CE must be nominated by a broadly represented nomination committee and then go through a process of 1 person, 1 vote to be returned by election. Any option that goes against the basic law is not practical. Universal suffrage must be endorsed by the CPG. If the CPG agrees, then we can have universal suffrage. Otherwise, our political system will have to stay put. If the political reform is not approved, then the people will miss the opportunity to elect the election on a 1-man, 1-vote basis in 2017. The nomination committee, according to the decision of the NPCSC in 2007, should make reference of the election committee comprising 4 sectors. It can ensure balanced participation by people from different sectors. There are 12,000 members, 1,200 members on the election committee at the moment. Could that number be expanded to, say, 1,600? This could be further explored. Regarding the nominated candidates, I think the number should be limited to 3 or 4. We must note that the number of candidates should not be too many. If there are too many candidates who don't have any popular mandate will contest the election, and that would waste the time of many people. I must emphasize that the opposition camp's idea of popular nomination, let's say if someone gathers 100,000 signatures, he will automatically become a candidate. That is tantamount to actually, voiding the functions of the nomination committee and is against the basic law. Must emphasize once again that according to the 2007 decision of the NPCSC, if we don't have universal suffrage for CE election in 2017, then in 2020 we are not going to have universal suffrage for the electrical election. And that would not benefit the community at all. Who should bear the responsibility? I'm sure the Pan Democratic will become the sinner for all eternity, resorting to irrational and illegal tactics like occupying Central, forcing the SARG and the CPG to put pressure on the two, then we would have to pay a heavy price for that. So I'd like to urge all the honourable members to take a step forward and adopt a rational and reasonable attitude so that we can all arrive at an option for universal suffrage. We are strongly against occupying Central. If the Pan Democratic camp continues to insist on popular nomination and then engage in the Occupy Central movement, then it will certainly not be beneficial to Hong Kong. Thank you, Chairman. Of course, we have to follow the basic law and the decision of the NPCSC. We need to be pragmatic. For the 5 steps, I think, according to the consultation paper, I think the final step is that the NPCSC would have to put on record or approve the result. Of course, legally speaking, we cannot ignore the basic law and the NPCSC. As to whether or not we can resort to civil disobedience and occupy Central to fight for what we want. But as somebody has said, there are differences in democratic election in different countries, different societies and different systems. In the 2000 election in the U.S., Al Gore won the majority of votes on a one-man, one-vote basis, but because of the system of electors, George W. Bush won. Actually, George Bush won fewer votes than Gore. And the case was taken to the Supreme Court, and the majority of the judges sitting on the Supreme Court came from the Republican Party. So was that really fair? Or was that a genuine election? And it has not only happened once. Historically, it has happened 4 times in the U.S. Did Al Gore incited people to occupy the White House, or engage in civil disobedience, or ask for 1 million or 10 million supporters to take to the street? No, he didn't. Perhaps he was politically a very mature person. Even the voters in the States are very pragmatic. So I hope we'll all consider the reality. Someone suggests that we should amend the basic law. Last week, Mr. Ren Kok-hong asked how many times has the Chinese Constitution been amended. There have been 3 times when the Chinese Constitution was amended. For constitutional documents, you do not likely amend it. You have to go through a very stringent process. In the U.S., you cannot likely amend the Constitution. You have to approve an amendment before you can supersede the earlier amendments to the Constitution. So within such a short time, can we amend the Constitution? In reality, we have to consider this question of time. We don't even have a consensus how we're going to elect the CE. I think I think if we talk about the amendment of basic law, it's going to be even more controversial. Regarding the composition of nomination committee, definitely we have to expand it. We cannot just stay at 1,200. The question is whether or not we can incorporate district councillors who are popularly elected. Certainly we can consider that. And I propose that there should be 3 candidates for C election. If some other people believe that there should be 5, then I'm also willing to that could also be discussed. Ms. K. Pang Wei. Thank you, Chairman. The method for returning the CE in 2017, there are different views. With the statement, loving Hong Kong, loving country, has caused a lot of arguments. I think we have to make reference of the basic law. Article 45 said that the CE must be nominated by a broadly nominating committee, and then we go through, an election on a one-man, one-vote basis. So the nomination committee therefore plays a crucial role. The nomination committee, pursuant to the decision of MPC-SCE, and making reference of the 4 sectors in the election committee, with the commerce and industry, the labor, and the political sector. Well, this can ensure that people from different sectors can have balanced, the equal right to participate in the election. Somebody suggested the number of members on the election committee should be increased from 12 to 1,600. That could be certainly negotiated. The election committee started with 800 members. In 2012, it was expanded to 1,200. So the nominating committee in the future certainly can also have a larger number of members, or it could incorporate the popularly elected district councillors to enhance its legitimacy. But the 3-track option proposed by the pan-democratic camp, nomination by political parties and public nomination, I think on the surface, they recognize the nomination committee is the only nominating organization, but in fact they want to bypass the decision of the nomination committee. They want to weaken the power authority of the nomination committee. And even the idea of nomination by individual does not even is even worse than Martin Lee's suggestion of organizational nomination. Regarding the number of candidates for the election, this is also a matter of concern by the public. Somebody said that if we only allow 3 or 4 people to contest the election, we can easily screen out potential candidates who stand a chance of winning the election just because they are not to the liking of the CPG. But many candidates in the West would first go through, the primary election before they will attend the national convention. The Republican Party, the Democratic Party in the States, and even some small parties would, field their candidates in this manner. Are you saying that they also have a screening process? If there are too many candidates, then it would result in a waste of time and resources. More importantly, since the votes are thinly spread out, the successful candidate will lack legitimacy, and before he even takes office, he will lack popular support. Right now, there's a suggestion that there should be nomination. Public nomination is the only legitimate option. But that's not true. In different countries in the world, there is no single standard. We must consider our own local circumstances, and make reference to basic law before we can, cater to the interests of Hong Kong. Mr. To Chok Ki, thank you. I think in Hong Kong has now reached the final stage of development for the last 20 years. Hong Kong's people's aspiration of returning the CE by universal suffrage is about to happen. If we're going to return the CE by universal suffrage in 2017, Hong Kong is going to become more and more divided, and the consequences could be disastrous.
To achieve universal suffrage, we must consider the requirements of the Basic Law. Any option that goes beyond the Basic Law will not do any good to the society of Hong Kong. If we go beyond the Basic Law framework, no matter whether the CPG is going to accept it or not, it will be difficult to achieve a consensus in Hong Kong. So we must implement universal suffrage within the basic law framework. As for the election method, I think we should make the nominating committee more representative and enhance its credibility. The way to do it is to increase the number of electors within the nominating committee. And we can take reference from the election committee. Within the 4 sectors, many of them are organizational votes, and actually individuals don't have the right to vote. Say in the financial sector, there is only corporate vote, and the individual practitioners don't have the right to vote. So if we can expand the electorate base to allow the practitioners to vote, say in the finance sector, all the agents can have the right to vote, and that can help enhance substantially the credibility of the nominating committee, and that will win the support of the public. Another way to enhance democracy is to include all district councillors in the nominating committee, and some of them are directly elected, and they do have a popular mandate. And if they make nominations, then their nominations will stand to will have support from the public. So we should make the nominating committee more representative. Now, as to the number of candidates, 2 to 3 is an appropriate number. It should be able to provide sufficient choices, and at the same time, it would avoid a wastage of public resources. Thank you. I will now open the floor to questions by members. Any members? Dr. N. Chang. Thank you, Chairman. We are talking about MPC-SC decisions all the time. Actually, one deputy of the MPC is here, and he is a veteran deputy. Thank you very much for coming here, Peter Wong. I have 3 questions. First, can you tell us in the political reform in Hong Kong, what's the CPG's role? After we have conducted consultations and we come up with proposals, some of them which may not meet with the requirements of the basic law, what is the role of the CPG in that regard? So I will ask you 3 questions in a go, and then you can reply in one go. Second, the nominating committee is clearly laid out in the basic law, and some CPG officials came to Hong Kong and suggested the idea of organizational nomination, and some opposition friends were bewildered why the sudden mentioning of organizational nomination instead of the nominating committee. So can you share with us your views? Say by the end of this year or early next year, and if the constitutional reform proposals can be endorsed, and we try out the new method in electing the CE in 2017, and if some problems surface in the process, would it be possible that the MBC will allow us to conduct a review? I must clarify, I'm speaking in my personal capacity here today. So if you talk about MPC, I would just speak in my personal capacity. First question. MPC acts in accordance with the law, and they will express their opinions for anything which is done illegally. Now, as for the interpretation of the Basic Law, it states clearly that there is nominating committee. It can be an organization. So it's really a matter of wordings. And what Mr. Lee Fei said doesn't go against the Basic Law, I think. Third, if anything untoward's happening in Hong Kong, I believe that the CPG will be very concerned and will support the SARG to do anything to make amends. Dr. N. Chang, can you also tell us? We might have different proposals after the consultation. Will the CBG have a final say on these different proposals? I think the final decision rests with the MPCSC. That was clearly written in the Basic Law. Next one, Ms. Emily Lau. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, deputations, for coming to give your views, MPC delegates or otherwise. Young people and other people talked about the Occupy Central movement. Mr. Chen Wai-hung, Mr. Lau Cho-him. The initial thinking was mooted by the three leaders, Reverend Chu and two others. If the movement doesn't meet with sort of international, or if the proposal doesn't meet with equal and universal suffrage, then they are going to occupy Central. But the sentiment seems to be changing these days, and people are talking about voting online and so on. And Mr. Lau said that the report will be compiled 2 months after the consultation ends. And that is certainly not going to be the final report because it will be submitted to Beijing and then the views will be expressed and so on. If the report is does not meet with people's aspirations, then people are going to take action immediately. Do you understand that Hong Kong people now are so very impatient and we are very anxious about taking things forward? Mr. Chen Wai-hung. Many members of the public are impatient, anxious, and are frightened. And we are afraid that one day Occupy Central will happen. And come one day, then we will not be able to go to work because there was no one, no police officer on the street because every police officer is in Central to maintain law and order. This is something that we are all very afraid of. We can see what is happening in Bangkok recently. We are afraid that that's going to be happening in Hong Kong. Who is inciting all these things? Most of my friends are strongly against Occupy Central. And everyone told me, Derek, if we can have one man, one vote to elect our CE, then that would be so desirable. So we are really heading towards that direction. The government and the community can work together, and we try to discuss things rationally, and we should not resort to violent means. I would never believe that Occupy Central is going to be a peaceful movement. Well, I respect what you believe in, Mr. Chan, but the advocates were saying they would do it in a peaceful, non-violent way. But then you said your friends are having different thoughts. But my question is, do you know that a vast majority of the public would believe that, will say that they would take action if things don't meet with their expectations. I do understand that people share your thinking, but others might have differing views. Do you get that? Mr. Lau Cho Him have raised his hand, so I will answer Ms. Lau's question. Ms. Lau is talking about things that might happen in the future and that might not happen. So it's difficult for me to give you a reply. Occupy Central may or may not happen. The initial thinking is to do it in a rational and peaceful manner, but that's only a presumption. No one can tell what is going to happen in the future. I cited an example from the U.S. So Al Gore at that time could motivate a lot of, or mobilize a lot of people to take to the streets, and then several judges of the Supreme Court were ruling against him. And under that condition, he could have mobilized masses of people to take to the streets, but he didn't do that. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future. People have differing opinions. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the future, but there may be a possibility that central movement may get beyond control and will be damaging to Hong Kong. Next one, Mr. Raymond Chan. For this session, similar views were expressed. I want to clarify one thing, civic nomination. Not all people said that civic nomination is illegal. And some said that it's too idealistic because it's doing things in one step. And it would be a waste of time if you were suggesting to do things in an illegal way. But up to now, CBG or SARG officials and even Leung Chun-ying on Thursday dare not say that civic nomination is illegal. Perhaps the Undersecretary can supplement it if he holds a differing view. What I want to say is about the number of candidates, the limit to be placed on the number. I will try to sum up your views in 3 points. If there are too many candidates, it would be difficult to make a choice. Now, let's look at Legislative. Well, we do have a number of candidates. In my constituency, there were 19 candidates. So if that is the case, do you think that a limit should be put on the number of candidates in other elections as well? Now, the second point is people are worried that there will be a waste of public funds. Are they really so much concerned about the public funds? How do you make that, how would you make that suggestion? Well, if that is really a sound argument, then the Undersecretary have to do some calculations. What is the impact on public funds if we have, say, 4 candidates, 6 candidates, and so on? How much does it cost to run a CE election? Third is about the mandate. Well, we can say simply we have 2 rounds, and then for the second round, if a candidate gets a majority vote, then he can win. If we do a second round of election, will the amount be increased from, say, $100 million to $200 million? We don't know. So after this meeting, the government may have to come up with a budget for the election. So if people are concerned about the money, and then that would make the election unfair, then I don't think it's a reasonable way of doing it. Mr. Chong Wai-Chung, I want to raise one point. In the last session, it was also discussed. Why can't we have more than one CE? Now, the difference is that Legislative is a supervisory organization. It is not here to govern us. In one company, there is only one CEO, and there will not be 2 CEOs governing the company. Well, you must understand that you are here to supervise the government or monitor the government. You should take that perspective on this particular issue. Mr. Yu Hon Lun at the back. Thank you, Chairman. I must sort of strike back. Well, the CEO, there is only one, but then the CEO is selected by the board of directors, so he should have mandate. Well, so you should have clear concepts about this. On the question of mandate, there may be a number of candidates. If you think that the mandate is still low after universal suffrage, then it means that you really don't buy into the concept of universal suffrage. So if that's the case, then you will say that the mandate, even after universal suffrage, is going to be low. So this is a wrong question. Now, as regarding public money, I don't know whether you really go back and make some calculation of the expenditure. There would be election expenses ceiling. I don't think that it would be difficult to play a gatekeeping role here. Next one, Mr. Alan Leung. I would like to thank deputations for taking the time to attend the meeting today. I saw a submission made by Mr. Peter Wong. I want to discuss with Mr. Wong two concepts to make sure that I fully grasp his views. First is about the nominating committee. He says the nominating committee is more representative than the electoral. Mr. Wong should be well aware of the 4 sectors under the election committee, and that should be taken as a reference for forming the nominating committee. Now, actually, in that 4 sectors, many sectors are unrepresented. Say, the housewives said they don't have a representative there, and students, they said they are not represented on the committee. So if that is the case, how come that this EC is more representative than electoral? Now, for agriculture and fisheries sector, they have 157 electors, and then they have 60 seats in the election committee. Now, for the legal profession, we have 7,000 electors, but then we only have 30 EC members. So how can you call that a balanced participation? That's the first concept. The second concept is in the same document. You mentioned, or you suggested, that there should not be no more than 3 candidates to be nominated by a 800-member nominating committee. So that means that we have to reduce 400 from the existing election committee. What's the reason? Why the cut of 400? You also said that the 3 nominations should be made by the nominating committee in accordance with democratic procedures. Should we model after the MPC delegates? Should there be a full list, and all the 36 deputies should vote for the 36 seats, or else the votes should be considered void? Yes, Mr. Peter Wong.
Well, in my submission, I mentioned that for the representativeness of the nominating committee is stronger than that for the representativeness of electoral. Why? Members of this council are, of course, returned by eligible voters, 3 million odd. But in the nominating committee, the scope goes beyond that. That's why the nominating committee is even more representative than the electoral election. For example, the religious sector is not represented in electoral. So what I mean is that the other point, the second point, three candidates on the size of the nominating committee, I propose it to be 800 because this is the first time that we set up a nominating committee. It's like when we first elected the CE, there were only 400 members on the election committee. Well, I propose 800 is fine if it goes to 1,200. But what I'm saying is because it's the first time with the nominating committee, that's why I think the size should be smaller. But would you say the size is small? An 800-member nominating committee. Well, just now others mentioned that for the U.S. president election, the Electoral College has just 500-odd members. I think it's all a matter of how representative the body is. So whether it's 800 or 1,200, I don't mind too much. I'm just saying that for the first nominating committee, a smaller size is better. Well, Mr. Pt2 did not answer that. The nominating committee is to select 3 candidates. Does this mean that each nominating committee must vote, give all 3 votes? Now, 2 votes won't be valid. You mean the same election as for NPC's deputies for Hong Kong? Yes, I propose 3 candidates. That is, the nominating committee proposes 3 eligible candidates for running in the direct election. Now, Mr. Lau Kong-Wan, Under Secretary, overall response, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would like to thank the interpretations and individuals for coming to give their views. I've jotted down all your views. While there is a common thread in all the views expressed, that is, we cherish all we have in Hong Kong now, and let's hope that if we could have constitutional reform, that would also bring about benefits to the stability and prosperity of Hong Kong. And we all share the wish that constitutional reform will be taken forward. Now, it seems that most views have been on the nominating committee, in enhancing representativeness or the procedures. These have all been mentioned. Now, there's a mention of a public nomination and so on. We are asked to do analysis. Well, actually, there are various options or proposals put forward now in the community. We are really keen to listen to the views of the public. As for Mr. Ray Chan, it's not a question of whether we dare or not dare to do something, but rather this is the consultation period. It could be the view of 1, it could be the view of 100. We would like to listen to all these views and then do a careful analysis. Why can't you say whether a proposal works or not now? Well, from the CE to the CS to us, we are really keen to first listen to proposals and views, and then we'll study them and see whether we could incorporate them into one proposal. Then hopefully we could narrow down the differences. Of course, when we do eventually submit a proposal to the Legislative Council, it must be in compliance with the Basic Law and the NPCSC decisions. That's definitely going to be the case. Now, in this session, there are many young people speaking, and there are even secondary students here, and we cherish their views. We'd like to have rational discussion. Mr. Leung Chun is a secondary school student. That's why I'd like to exchange views with you. Yes, of course. You have done in-depth analysis. The 5-step process, you propose it to be a 6-step process. Yes, I fully follow your points. So you're saying that in terms of constitutional development, there should be constant evolution. It's not just to achieve what we want to achieve today, and that's it. If you look at the leaders in Hong Kong, before the reunification, we had a governor sent to us from the UK. Hong Kong people did not get to vote at all. After the reunification, we were able to vote for our chief executive. You might say, well, it was through the election committee, but still, in Hong Kong, we're able to elect our chief executive. That's a step forward. Now, for the past 3 terms of the CE, The election committee's size has been increasing from 400 to 800 to 1,200. Again, it's a constant evolution. Today, we're going to face an even bigger change. A CE who is elected by 1,200 people, in future, he may be elected by 3 million or even 4 million voters. That's a gigantic step forward. So this may be a historic step that we're taking, and we have to cherish this development. If you look at the experience overseas, like in the United States, when they started and where they are now, you can see their electoral methods have changed a lot. So our objective is one person, one vote for the CE election. But in terms of the mechanism, on the basis of past experiences and the experiences overseas, we see that there could be evolution. That's why I fully share your observation. Mr. Yu Hanlun said there's no direction for our consultation. Actually, we have clear direction. We would like to achieve universal suffrage. You might say we haven't got a proposal yet. The reason is because we would first like to collect the views of the public. That's the most important purpose of the consultation. Mr. Ray Chen reminded us to come up with a budget or an estimate. Well, honestly speaking, we haven't yet come to that stage. We would like to dedicate our focus and effort now on a proposal that we could accept, so we could take a big step forward, this historic step. But since you've mentioned that, Mr. Raymond Chen, I would be more than happy to ask my colleagues to look at it. Maybe it's not an estimate. Maybe we could just give you the information for past electoral informations. Maybe a 5 candidate in one constituency, 9 candidates in another constituency, or even 19 candidates. Well, we can give you how much it costs just for reference. Okay, that's all for this session. I would like to thank the deputations and individuals for coming to this session. The 4th session will start at 2:15 p.m.